Welcome back to Refit and Sail. My name's George, Isted, the Solent Boat Butler. We are on Lottie, the Contessa 32 from the mid-70s that's with me for a moderately extensive refit, and I know that does raise a smile every time you hear it. Yes, it's been a very extensive refit, but in this episode we are going to wire up the batteries. We're going to put the master battery switch into the panel back here, wire up the battery charger, and do some electrical bits and bobs. I'm currently sat on the batteries. They're under the seat at the chart table, and if you've seen the earlier videos in this series, you'll know that this is all new wood. I've rebuilt the panel here. I've got as far as installing the 240 volt circuit because I wanted to have at least one 240 volt outlet just for running the power tools and stuff that I am using inside the boat, because it saved me running a cable through the hatch, which is far better than it was before. But in this episode, we're going to be doing some battery wiring. So the first thing that I always recommend people do when they are installing a new electrical system is to fit a battery monitor, and I'm going to be fitting this chap here. It's a Victron 512. I fitted more than I care to remember of these. It's my preferred battery monitor. I know there are lots around, lots of other suppliers around, but not sponsored by Victron. It's just a nice piece of kit. You can connect to it through a Bluetooth app on your phone, so you don't even need to put it somewhere that's really obvious, although it's nice to have it at the chart table. So I'm going to mount that tucked right up here behind, so you'll be able to see it if you stick your head into the quarter berth, but I envisage that most people will do what I do, which is go and open up the app on the phone and go, yeah, batteries are all good, I can see what's going in, I can see what's coming out, so that's all good. I'm installing that now because as part of the battery monitor, in fact I will show you, there is a thing called a shunt, and the shunt is the widget that measures very, very accurately the amount of current going in and out of a battery. So this is what it looks like. This is what they call a smart shunt because it has some smartness to it, but effectively it's this thing, and that needs to be mounted as the first item basically as you are looking at the wiring of the batteries. So it is directly connected to the negative side of the house bank. So that will be going in. Alongside that, I've got a whole bunch of other stuff, which is very important. So I've got some fuses, which I'll be needing to put in. So I'm using these things here. This is a fuse holder, which will accept these fuses here. So I've got two fuses, one for the battery for the engine start and one for the house bank, and a spare. It's always important to give the owner of a boat a spare fuse just in case something very bad does go wrong. These boats originally did not have fuses on their batteries, but it's good practice to have it now, and I always fit them. After that, the power is going to be coming up from the batteries through the shunts, through the fuse, and up to a master battery switch. Now I am fitting this chap here. It is a very, very simple Blue Sea Systems battery switch. I've fitted these on a few boats as well, and it switches on two circuits at the same time. So rather than having an individual switch for the domestic side and the engine start side, this switches on both at the same time. So you just do that, and then your domestics and your engine are on at the same time. But it has the benefit that you can combine them. So again, what I've done in the past on some boats is I've fitted individual switches and then I've fitted a third combiner switch. So if for any reason your engine start battery does go down, you can start your engine on your domestic bank, and you can do the same on this by clicking it around one more, and it goes to the combine setting, and that combines the engine start and the domestic battery bank at the same time. You can then start the engine on the effectively on the domestic bank, stick it back to on, and then it will just charge normally into both of the battery banks that you've got installed on your boat. So without any more of ado, I'll show you the batteries and then get cracking with some wiring. Here are the three batteries. So we've got two big Rolls AGMs here. They are about, I think, 120 ampere off the top of my head. And then tucked in at the back there, there is a dedicated engine start battery from Odyssey batteries. I've used them quite a lot. They are very small, very powerful, high CCA battery for starting engines. So they are sitting in a custom-made battery box, which I made. It's just a plywood with glass bonded into the hull, bonded into the locker, and the one thing I'm yet to do is put some battery retainers in there, some straps in there, just to stop them from falling out should the boat go upside down, but that will happen in due course, because at the moment I'm interested in cabling them all up and running the cables to the engine as well. So the cable runs are going to be pretty short because the engine, as you can see, is right there, if you excuse the dust sitting on it. And I've got a nice bit of space, if I can twist this around, I've got a nice bit of space kind of in here and in here to mount things like that shunt for the battery monitor and some other terminals and bits and pieces that I'm going to be putting in there. So I'm going to have a quick look at where things are going to fit, and I'll give you an update in a minute. Now, it's only just occurred to me how tricky filming this is going to be, because there's a very small space to work in and even less space to hold a camera so you can see what I'm doing. But I've had a bit of a think about where I want to place things, and if I just swing this down a little bit, you can see what I've done. So obviously these are the house batteries, so the fuse for the house bank is this one here. That's obviously going to be positive, and then what I've put in here next to it are, this is the negative bus. There's a bus bar in there. Now that is covered, and here is the shunt which goes on the negative side. Now this doesn't have a cover, so I thought it makes sense to physically separate it from the positive side, and this obviously does have a cover because I think that's the safest way to do it. Now the fuse for the engine battery I have put next to the engine battery, so I can have a very, very short cable run from there directly onto the fuse, and then that can go off to the switch, which is yet to be mounted. So that's the plan. I'm going to make up a few of the cables that are going to go in and then take it from there. Now when it comes to making up the battery cables, there are some that just want to make the runs as short as possible. So the logic would, on that side, dictate that you just run a cable from the positive there to the fuse, the negative there to the shunt, and then you can just link these two. But the problem with doing that is that this is the battery that will get used more and depleted more quickly, because there's going to be a very, very small amount of resistance between any linking cables that you put in there and there. So the better solution is actually to have the positive on there and have a link to there, and have the negative off here and a link between there, so the resistance is kind of equaled out and these batteries will be used completely in the same way, so they will be used and recharged the same amount all the time, because you've kind of balanced where the cabling is on the system. It's really easy to do on a 2-battery system. It starts getting more complicated on multiple battery systems. I did once install, I think it was 5 lithium batteries on a Halberg Rassi, and I ended up having to make similar length cables off of each battery to go into a separate linking junction box, which then fused each battery independently and then took all the cables off to where they needed to go. That was a much more complicated system than that's going on to this boat. So I'm just going to have a positive off to there and a link, and a negative off from there and a link going that way, and that should be all good. Now I did forget to say one important thing. When drilling these holes down here, if you end up with a similar system to mine, it's worth taking the batteries out before you drill the mounting holes for this hardware, because it's really easy when you're drilling through there, the drill will pop out the other side and potentially pierce your battery. So do as I do, take the batteries out, do all the drilling, pop the batteries back in. It's a safer option than going off and having to buy a new battery. It's a very, very expensive and messy mistake. Now, I'm not going to show you the making up of every single cable because that would be fairly dull and there is only so much internet to go around, but I will show you the crimping of one cable. So this is my 35mm cable. It's oversized really for what it needs to be. 25 will be fine, but as long as it's adequately fused, it's all good, and it never hurts to slightly oversize cables. Here is one of the little battery crimps. In fact, I've got the wrong size out because that is a 35/6, so it's that's how they're named. So it will say 35/6, so it's for a 35mm cable, and 6mm is the size of the hole. Now I need a 35/8, I think. So let me just grab one of those out of the packet. There we go, 35/8. It's stamped on it, if you can see that. See if I can get it to focus, maybe. Anyway, I'm just going to double check that is the right size by taking one of the battery studs off. Yep, That's all good. Screw that on so I don't lose it. So I'm going to take my 35/8, I'm going to hold it up to my cable, work out how much of the sheathing I need to take off, then get a knife, run that around. I'm not actually sawing at it, I'm literally just holding the knife against it and it goes through really easily. Pull that off and we have the nice tinned strands of the battery cable there. That should now be a nice fit to go on there. And do you know what? I reckon I could take another mil of sheath off just to get it in a tiny bit further. Take off another couple of mil. There we go, because we want it to get it fully all the way in. There we go. That's about right. Now we've got to crimp it. There are many crimpers available of different styles, types, expense and what have you. My favourite one is one of these chaps here, and what you can do on the top here is you can change the dies by pushing that in, and then you can turn this bit around and you choose the appropriate die for the size of cable that you're doing. Now I'm using 35mm cable, so those are the dies. What I quite like about this over a hydraulic crimper is the hydraulic crimpers you have to take out the dies and put in the correct ones, and they're very easy to lose. The number of times I've seen people go, oh, have you got a die for a such and such? And I say no, because I don't actually use one most of the time. So use this, it doesn't take a lot of effort, and poke that in the jaws and get it in. There we go. And then I normally hold it against myself. It's slightly awkward doing this in front of a camera. There we go. And I'll do it a couple of times down the length of the tube that we're crimping. I must say, I'm making this look more difficult than it normally is because I'm kneeling on the floor in front of a camera. But I'll give it one more little go there. There we go. Pop that down there. So that's it now, nicely crimped up. It now needs a bit of heat shrink. So I buy rolls of heat shrink. I normally just use black for everything, but I thought I would treat myself to red. So I have red and black. So there's a little bit of red heat shrink to go over there. And now I need some heat. You can use a heat gun, or because sometimes working on boats which don't have 240-volt electrics, I have a very little torch. Now these are often used in kitchens for browning the top of your creme brulee, but the striker on this thing is unfortunately broken, so I have to light it off a lighter and then switch it on to continuous, and you can see maybe there's a little flame coming out the end there, and I can just, without getting it too close, warm up the heat shrink over the terminal, and there we go. One end done. And do you know what I've done? I've just realised. I got out a 35/8 and I also left out the 35/6. Guess which one I've just put on? Well, it's not the end of the world because I actually do need a 35/6 for the engine start battery. So I'll just do that battery instead of the house pack first. There we go. First little linking cable all ready to go. What's nice about making the cables, you can also work out the orientation of the end that you want. So you might want it at 90 degrees or 45 degrees or whatever. Just to, I mean, you know, they are flexible, but it's nice to have it so it's easy to fit. So this can now connect the engine start battery to the fuse. That go on there. And that can go on there. I just need to find the nuts to go on those. And just for now, so I don't lose it, put the cover on there. I need to make up some labels to go on the fronts of these. I've got a label maker, and whilst it's hopefully blindingly obvious that that is the fuse for the engine start battery, I will label it anyway, because I like labelling things. Makes it all neat and tidy, and saves any confusion if someone's trying to work out what's going on with the batteries in the middle of the night when they haven't got enough sleep, and they may not be as au fait with electrical systems as I am. Now, I have to make the confession that I do sometimes make on these videos, and that is sometimes I've just got to get on and do the work. So I haven't shown every single element of putting all these battery cables in, but it's pretty much done now, so let me show you how it looks. Connected to that shunt that I showed you a moment ago is the battery monitor. So I've tucked it in right up in the corner here. It's currently on 100% because the batteries have been on charge, although the battery charger is now off. So it shows the main battery bank voltage, so that's the domestic bank at 13.3. There is the engine start battery at just under 13 volts. 0 amps are currently being consumed because nothing is currently connected to those batteries. No watts, no amperes out, so we are at 100%. I have also gone into the app and checked that the app connects in via Bluetooth, and that all works nicely, and I've set up the battery capacity as well so it knows what it's connected to. So there we go, that is the main battery cables. They go down to the fuses. There's the fuse for the domestics. We've got a negative bus bar there. We've got the shunt in there. There's the fuse for the engine start battery that's in there. I have also run, you can see there, the cables for the engine. I like to physically separate them when they go through holes like that, just because there's a chance that they might wear on each other, and they are now connected up to the engine as well. Here you can see where the cables pop out from the compartment adjacent to the engine bay. Got the red positive that runs all the way up, along, back down, and alongside that is the wiring loom, which I've reinstalled and plumbed into the engine, so that is connected onto the starter back there. The negative is connected into the block back there, and they're all connected up. So essentially, if I wanted to start the engine, I probably could, apart from the fact that there's no control cables or diesel lines connected to it, but the power is certainly there, and I just need to plug the control panel into the other end of the wiring loom, which is hidden behind there. So the other thing you can see here is there is a master battery switch, the one I showed you earlier. If I wiggle that out from its home, you can see back there all the cables all connected up. I've labelled all the cables as well, so it's pretty obvious, hopefully, to anyone looking at this, what is connected where. So there's an awful lot of old cabling there that I've still got to sort out, 12 volt stuff, and there's some new cables here which I've got to sort out and connect up. Now, because I don't actually plan these videos very well, in fact at all, I just record stuff as I'm working, I remembered in the edit that I talked about the battery charger in the start of this video, and then I didn't talk about it when I was doing the wiring work. So let me show you how that looks. You can just about see the battery charger poking out from round the corner. But I installed it when I was doing the 240 volt installation, because it was just easier to do that, because I wanted to get that wired directly into the 240 volt breaker panel. So it has its own switch here, so I can click that on, power it up, and that is then charging the batteries. Now I've just climbed into the quarter berth, so you can see I've tucked it up there out of the way. It's got a bit of free space above it and below it so that air can circulate, because these things do get warm. It has an internal fan, so if it gets too warm it will cool itself down, but it's nice to make sure that it's got a bit of free air space around it. It's also worth making sure it's going to be put somewhere where it's not going to get dripped on, so hopefully nothing is going to leak from above on it as well. It's also nice and close to all the electrical panels, so the cable runs can be nice and short. So as much as I installed the battery charger when I was doing the 240 volt side, I didn't install at that stage the 12 volt power leads to the batteries. So I put those on as part of the battery wiring. And the one thing that I often see on boats when people have installed battery chargers is they do not remember to fuse the line that goes to the battery. So I'll show you what I've done on this one. So if I just bring the camera down, again, it's all a bit difficult to see back here, but we have the starter battery here. There's the starter battery main fuse, and I've connected the battery charger outlet onto this side of the fuse, because if that fuse breaks and someone switches on the battery charger, I don't want them to damage the battery charger, so I want this to have a direct connection to the battery. I could have put that directly onto the terminal, but actually I thought it would be neater to put it onto this end of the fuse. But importantly, that has its own fuse. So this is a splash-proof blade fuse holder. The cable is rated for up to 30 amps. It's got a 30 amp fuse in there, and it's a 30 amp charger. In reality, it's never going to put out 30 amps to both batteries at the same time. Unlikely to do more than 20 amps, because it's obviously splitting that 30 amps over the two banks of batteries, the starter bank and the house bank. So 30 amps is more than enough to cover that, protect the wiring, and that's essentially what the fuse is there for. But the number of times I've been on boats where the battery charger has been installed and they forget that this cable here does need to be fused, because when the, well, not just when the battery is charging, but at any time, this is a live cable, so if it chafed through, it could short out on a negative cable or something on the boat. So it's very important to remember to fuse your charger cables on the battery end. I think I'm going to bring this video to a close here. I apologise if I haven't shown you perhaps quite as much of the works as necessary, but it's actually really difficult to be in here and record stuff and talk to camera, so I've just had to get on. It's sometimes the nature of my business. My primary job is to fix the boats, it's not to create YouTube videos, but hopefully there's been a few tips and tricks that I've given you along the way there, showing you how to make cables, show you how to run cables and bits and pieces. That is useful to you if you are doing a similar project. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to support the show, you can do so using the link that's down in the description below. There's a PayPal link there where you can go and buy me a beer if you so wish. If you don't wish to, that's absolutely fine, no problem at all. And I will see you next time. Bye for now.